A lot of the time when we talk about new couch co-op games, we end up seeing a lot of 2D and pixel art style games, which I love, but those aren't the only games around. So I really wanted to make a video just focusing on the 3D couch co-op games that came out in 2024. Earth Defense Force 6. Yeah, so this is the 6th game in the franchise, but this is a series which has consistently included split-screen co-op gameplay, all the way back to the PS2. If you're not familiar with the Earth Defense Force series, let me break it down for you. It's basically a third-person shooter, and you fight a variety of alien bugs, frogs, ants, and stuff like that. At the beginning of each mission, you're able to choose your class, which all have their own unique weapons and abilities. My favorite is this girl with the jetpack. You could just fly around all over the place, it's awesome. And this is all done in a B-movie type of style. Yeah, Earth Defense Force 6 doesn't necessarily add anything new to the series. It still has that low-budget type of feel. But that's not a bad thing. That's kind of what the series is known for. And yeah, just like all the other games, you can play through the entire story mode in split-screen co-op. I don't know if this game is worth the $60 price tag, but if you can find it on sale, I think it's definitely worth trying out. Frogun Encore is the follow-up to the indie game Frogun. This is pretty much an homage to PlayStation 1 and maybe Sega Saturn and Nintendo 64 era 3D platformers. And it does a really good job of recreating that kind of visual style. But the best part about this sequel is it added couch co-op gameplay. So now you can explore these levels with a friend. I'm always skeptical of 3D platformers as it doesn't always work that well with the camera. And this one's not perfect. I still notice some issues, but the overall visual style and the gameplay is just really solid. And if you're a fan of 3D platformers like Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, or Crash Bandicoot, you're definitely going to enjoy this one. Chained Together. This is a game that kind of just blew up out of nowhere. The reason I heard about this game is a bunch of people just started talking about it on TikTok and social media. Ultimately, it's a 3D platformer, and it's really janky and not super polished. But hear me out, that doesn't take away from the experience. It's still just a really fun, yet kind of stressful 3D platformer, and it's even better when you can play it with friends. So the concept is simple. You and up to 3 friends in split-screen co-op are all connected by chains. You're all in hell for some reason, and you're trying to climb out of hell. There's no combat in the game. It's all about walking and climbing and jumping your way as high as you can go. But you have to work together, because if one of your friends falls, there is the chance that they could drag all of you back down to the very beginning of the world. And then you have to start all over. Luckily, you can play it with checkpoints, so if you do fall, you're able to restart from the highest point, which is what I would recommend. Don't let the low budget feel and visuals of this game deter you. This is actually a really fun co-op experience. 2024 was kind of a big year for Ninja Turtle games. One of the games that was a complete surprise to me is TMNT Unleashed. Now this one is kind of a continuation of the most recent animated TMNT movie. You know, the one that Seth Rogen was involved in? Yeah, and I actually found this game to be really interesting. Overall, it's pretty much like a 3D platformer slash 3D beat 'em up, but it also has these sections in between that people have been comparing to Persona. I'm not that familiar with those games, so I can't really speak to that. But what I did enjoy about this game is the combat and platforming. You just feel really quick and nimble here. Yeah, it might not be the best Ninja Turtles game, but I would say it's one of the more unique ones. So if you're looking for something a little bit different from just a standard beat 'em up, definitely give this one a try. But yeah, maybe go in with an open mind. Nikoderiko, The Magical World. This one is clearly inspired by Donkey Kong Country and Crash Bandicoot, and the gameplay changes up a bit. A lot of the time it's a 2D platformer, but it also switches to a 3D perspective, and those are the sections that are most like Crash Bandicoot. And similar to the games that inspired it, there will be lots of collectibles. You can also get onto different animals that you can ride, kind of similar to the rhino or the ostrich in Donkey Kong Country, and they all have different abilities. But this is a game that really does a great job of mixing 2D and 3D platforming into one experience. And it just really helps break things up and adds some variety. And both gameplay styles are done really well. If you're looking for a co-op game to play with your family, Nikoderiko, The Magical World is probably one of the best choices of the year. Now I want to talk about one of the lesser known games on this list, Deepest Trench. So this is a fully 3D game that can be played in split screen co-op. You and your partner will be spending most of your time diving down into the water and working together to solve various puzzles. This one is definitely built around co-op gameplay. You often have to split up to solve puzzles, where each player is going to have a different task, and you have to work together to open a door or something like that. There aren't any enemies in the game, however you do have limited oxygen, so that's going to be the main obstacle. It's just cool to see indie developers creating more unique 3D experiences here. When it comes to indie developers, we often just see 2D games because those are probably a little bit more affordable and easy to manage. This game, similar to Chained Together, is kind of janky at parts. It's definitely far from perfect, but go into it with an open mind. This is not a AAA experience, but it is still a really good experience. And overall, I just think it's an impressive game to see. One of the games I wanted to briefly mention is called POPUCOM. Now, this game does not have a release date yet, but while I was putting this list together, I played the demo for this. Unfortunately, the demo is no longer available, but I wanted to talk about it anyways, as I thought this was a really cool experience. It's basically like a 3D platformer with shooting, kind of like Splatoon, but it's much more puzzle based, and you can play through the entire game in split screen co-op. Anyways, sorry that the demo's no longer available. I still wanted to talk about this game, and I just wanted to make more people aware of it, because it's a really cool and unique experience. So put it on your Steam wish list, and hopefully we get a release date soon. LEGO Horizon Adventures. This is LEGO's take on the Horizon Zero Dawn series. So if you're familiar with LEGO gameplay for the Star Wars games or Indiana Jones or LEGO Batman or Harry Potter or whatever, LEGO Horizon will definitely fit in with those games. This one is definitely aimed more towards kids, so it would be a great game to play with the whole family. And a lot of those games are pretty much like 3D platformers and with some combat. However, this one does have a few things that helps it stand out from the other LEGO games. And that might be because it's actually being developed by Guerrilla Games. And it's pretty much a retelling of Horizon Zero Dawn, but with the LEGO humor and style. But this one also kind of just feels more like a kid version of Horizon Zero Dawn. A lot of the same gameplay is intact, and it has the same big, huge boss fights where you gotta look for the weak points. And this is really satisfying with 2 players, as you can team up and jump at them from 2 different sides, and take them down together. If you're a fan of the Horizon games, this is a great retelling of that series. And it's an opportunity to bring that franchise to maybe less experienced gamers. You could definitely play this one with your family, but it's also still fun and challenging enough for serious gamers to want to try out as well, even if you don't have kids. Ys X Nordics is a fully 3D co-op RPG. If you're familiar with the Ys series, it's pretty similar to some of the more recent entries, but this one is actually made for co-op gameplay. Unfortunately, you can't play co-op right from the start. You gotta play for at least an hour to 2 before it actually switches over to co-op, which is kind of disappointing because there is a ton of dialogue. So I just quickly skipped through all of that as fast as I could to get to the part where I can play with a partner. So if you're able to skip it and you don't care about the story, like me, it definitely saves you a lot of time. Anyway, once you get to the part where you can play in co-op, it's a really solid and equal experience. The combat feels good, and there's even co-op moves that you can pull off. There's tons of upgrades, you're able to go into the towns to talk to people and figure out what your next objectives are, and there's also plenty of dungeons that you're going to want to explore as well. If you're a fan of RPGs, I highly recommend this game. Couch co-op RPGs are pretty hard to come by right now, so this one definitely stood out to me. But just know, this is a very anime game, and there's tons of dialogue and tons of voiceovers and a lot of stuff that might be annoying if you're not a fan of anime. So feel free to just skip all of that and just focus on the gameplay itself, because that part is really solid. But my favorite 3D co-op game of the year is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, the remake. I've talked about the original Brothers game numerous times on this channel. It was not originally a co-op game, but the Switch port allowed you to play it in co-op. But originally, you're supposed to control both characters with one controller, and each character was designated to the left and right thumbstick. And that's kind of what made the gameplay unique. But I always felt that this game would work really well as a co-op game. I played through it by myself, but then I played through it in co-op on the Nintendo Switch version a couple times as well. But then finally the remake happened, and every single port of the game included the co-op gameplay. And it's a pretty faithful remake of the game. The gameplay is all intact here. It just has a fresh coat of paint. The visuals look really solid, with lots of detail. If you're able to play this in 4K with HDR, I highly recommend it. It's a really beautiful game. This is a time where just big 3D worlds with a story is pretty rare to include co-op gameplay. So whenever something like that happens, it always gets my attention. But yeah, brothers, any way you play it is just one of my favorite gaming experiences ever. And being able to play this emotional story with a partner, I think really elevates the experience. So for that reason, it's my #1 co-op 3D game of 2024. So there you go. There are 10 couch co-op games that are all 3D and they came out in 2024. What are some other games that I didn't mention? And if you enjoyed this video, check out our video where we talked about every single co-op game on the Sega Saturn. Thanks for watching.